up, Badlands? Explain those Badlands. That's a hell of a name.
Mr. Vice President, I'm going off script again, I know, but I just want to personally thank you. We've been through some stuff. We've gone through some of the most complex military operations this country's ever conducted, and your steady hand and your leadership during those was a great source of strength for me. Thank you for your leadership. Thank you for your character. Thank you for your selfless service. Thank you for commitment. Thank you for being a mentor to me, Mr. Vice President.
It's called the swamp. And you know what happened? And you know what I did? A big favor. I caught the swamp. I caught them all. Let's see what happens. Nobody else could have done that but me. I caught all of this corruption that was going on, and nobody else could have done it. Did I get that one right? Every 4 years, we gather on these steps to carry out the orderly and peaceful transfer of power. Today's ceremony, however, has very special meaning, because today we are not merely transferring power from one administration to another, but we are transferring power from Washington, D.C., and giving it back to you, the people. For too long, a small group in our nation's capital has reaped the rewards of government, while the people have borne the cost. Washington flourished, but the people did not share in its wealth. This American carnage stops right here and stops right now. The forgotten men and women of our country will be forgotten no longer. From this day forward, a new vision will govern our land. From this day forward, it's going to be only America first.
This is a president of the United States who is a danger to the republic.
America first.
He knows he's an illegitimate president.
The oath of office I take today is an oath of allegiance to all Americans.
The great Trump recovery.
America will never be a socialist country. I will fight for you with every breath in my body.
Russia, Russian, pro-Russian, Russian, Russia, Russian, 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 the Russians. Russian.
Russia, Russia, Russia.
And I will never, ever let you down.
A dangerous virus is spreading rapidly in China, and U.S. officials are very worried that it could come here.
This is really the worst attack we've ever had. This is worse than Pearl Harbor. This is worse than the World Trade Center. There's never been an attack like this.
The time for empty talk is over. Now arrives the hour of action. What they're doing is using COVID to steal an election. Together, we will make America strong again. You know what it's about? Fraud, fake ballots. We will make America wealthy again. They are trying to steal the election.
Now, under the leadership of President Trump, we are fully realizing President Kennedy's prescient view of Special Operations Forces.
We will make America proud again. And watch, please, those mail-in ballots. We will make America safe again. And in millions and millions of ballots, their vote is under what they thought they needed. They're dumping more ballots in there, okay? And yes, together, we will make America great again. Thank you. God bless you. If we are right about the fraud, Joe Biden can't be president.
Congress, the chair declares the joint session dissolved.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Wednesday edition of the Devolution Power Hour. Mr. Burning Bright, we are kind of matching.
I know.
I like it.
Yeah.
You should coordinate more often. I think it's good.
I think it shows that we've been along the same lines with our analysis.
Yeah.
And the same kind of thought paths. Could make for some good back and forth. I am 90% over the man flu. So my remaining 10% is about as sick as a woman has ever been.
Yeah.
Is like what I'm dealing with right now. But I
would
can
milk
get
that
through
as
that
long as
because
you
I'm
can.
a man. Yeah. So we should be okay.
You know, I applaud your bravery during this illness and your
Thank
strength and just you're clearly so strong, putting on such a strong example for the other people in that house that don't deal with illness as well as you do.
It's true.
Your son is definitely going to look back at this moment in time and be very proud.
Right. I'm proud of myself. I'm looking up to myself right now. And,
You always do.
I like what I see.
You're so good.
Another news, though, my son was cracking up at me today because Daddy Daycare Comedy Hour hit its stride. Feel like just I couldn't miss anything I did was hilarious. And Mrs. Bright will tell you she was trying to be funny when she got home and like just wasn't hitting the same way.
Well, okay, when the kids are as old as your kids are, they just react to silly faces and high-pitched voices, which you sent that video, and that was some very high-pitched voices.
Baby talk voices.
Yeah.
Yep.
Maybe I'd play that if your baby wasn't featured so heavily in it.
No,
Don't want to show people what your baby looks like. But anyway, for those who are new to the show, new to the stream, I do see we're featured on Rumble tonight. Make sure you guys hit that thumbs up and give us a follow. We're going to talk about a lot of the stuff going on, that very Jimmy Russlin behavior from the Trump administration these last few days.
Incredible.
Yeah. The Trump in Saudi Arabia, the speech he gave, I mean, it just hit so many notes for us.
Can you imagine Ghost spurging out on his like anniversary trip?
Yeah.
It's like Mrs. Ghost picked this week to celebrate their marriage.
Of all weeks. I mean, honestly, it's probably a good thing because had they not like gone to France, he would be spurging out at home. They'd probably be divorced by now. Like, who knows?
Right.
So it's probably saved their marriage, them being away during this time period.
That's true. Yeah, game theory. I like it.
Yeah. Yeah. But he was texting. I don't even remember what he said. Like in our group chat, he's like, there's nothing better than drinking rosé on a patio with a bunch of French dudes just spurging out or something. Like, who are you, Ghost?
He coined the term brosé, which
That's
I liked
funny.
it. It was pretty funny. So
And the Jacob Accords, the just a couple bros Accords. I thought that was
I
pretty
didn't know
cool.
what that was. Is that's a Ghost thing?
Yeah, I think so.
That's
He's the only one
hilarious.
I heard say it. Yeah.
Just a couple of bros, of course. All right, I like it. That's
Yeah.
what it is. This is the kind of hard for anybody who's happening across the stream. This is just the barest hints of the sort of high level analysis you're going to get.
On Badlands Media. Yeah, we
have been
are
right about everything for years. So
Yep.
just saying.
And we are doing so while unapologetically free speech. Like we don't care what anybody on the network says. That doesn't always benefit us financially. We get kicked off of every platform, but it is a lot of fun, and it's nice not having to be afraid about what you're going to say. Before we get into any of the topics, besides Saudi Arabia, the China American trade deal that happened, there's like an interesting story that everybody has missed, and I think it's like the most important aspect of the story, and it proves a lot of like the narrative warfare we see playing out. So I want to discuss that a little bit. Those
Is
are
it
the
the
only two
basement
topics.
delegation? Shut a spoiler.
It's a secret.
All right,
Don't ruin it.
Yep.
I guess I already talked about this on my show like 2 days ago, but those are the only two topics I wrote down. Is
They're big topics.
I wrote down sovereign alliance and secret China. So
that's enough. We can run with that. Yeah. I mean, there's a million things that I think we should tease out the sovereign alliance. I don't want to start there.
Well, we can talk secret China first after our sponsors. And yeah, you're right. There's a ton going on. The mainstream media is
Middle East tour is incredible that Trump is on, and that leads us into sovereign alliance. There's a Turkey meeting supposed to happen this week with Russians. There's been a lot of very fun kayfabe, or not kayfabe, just there's been a lot of fun back and forth between Trump's team and Putin's team about like, you go, I'll go if you go, I'll go if you go. I think they're teasing us all. I don't think that they're going this week, but I think they're having a lot of fun with it, and they're kind of sending like the peons, the peasants, to talk to each other.
Bring that up later, because I think I have a different take on that.
All right.
I mean, you might be right. You probably are right. But the reason I think you could be wrong, I think is a valid reason.
Okay.
So that'll make sense later when we get there. I do think it's interesting too, like the mainstream media is having to deal with the fact that like the tariffs are here, but why isn't the recession we said would be here not here? Which is really funny to see play out. So we'll talk about that a little bit. Yep, everything is up. And Trump is like calling a shot. He's like the world's greatest stock advisor right now. He's telling you when to buy, and he's right every single time. We also have potential peace with Iran, like nuclear deal framework kind of agreed to, barring a couple things. So we'll get through all that. But before we do, let's get a quick word from a couple of our sponsors. First up, we have Save Pulse. Today's show is sponsored by Save Pulse. Save Pulse, we are dedicated to keeping you and your family healthy with top quality medications like amoxicillin, azithromycin, ivermectin, and hydroxychloroquine at unbeatable prices. Our streamlined ordering process makes it easy to stock up on health essentials. And now with exciting news about fenbendazole showing promise in cancer research, we're proud to offer this alongside our antibiotics and viral care meds. Don't wait. Prepare for any health scenario today. Get your supply and stay ahead of the curve with Save Pulse. Now you can save even more. Visit badlandsmedia.tv/meds and use promo code SAVEHEALTH at checkout to get a 20% discount on orders over $100. Yeah, guys, if you don't have those meds in your medicine cabinet, where have you been the last like 4 years? Well, let's not say that. I feel like that's
true.
That's not an FDA approved claim. BB, you're not allowed to say that.
Well, you're probably going to die at some point.
Well, true.
It just might not have to do with that, but it might have to do with that. So,
I've figured out where I'm going to die, and it's this darn GART cruise that they're planning behind my back. Have you heard the whispers of this yet?
Is Mrs. Bright involved in this stuff?
Yeah.
She's like getting stuff together that I'm not. Yeah. Zach was like messaging me about my trip to Florida.
What?
Yeah. Like.
When are you going to Florida?
Next year, apparently. None of this has been actually planned.
Oh, okay.
This is just, there's whispers. I feel like Mrs. Bright's got some different irons in the fire of stuff going on.
And you know what? You know what they say? If you put too many irons in the fire, eventually you're going to burn the place down. Right. And that's
Mrs. Bright famously messes up sayings, and she always says too many steaks in the fire, not irons.
Like food steaks, like steaks from cows,
like steaks,
or like steaks that you kill vampires with.
No, like actual meat steaks. It doesn't make any sense, but now I accidentally say that a lot when I try to say that saying. Something you should know about me.
I feel like I already know too much about you, and so I wish you could retract something. But okay, well, what do you want to start with, since you don't want to talk about the Sovereign Alliance stuff right away? Oh yeah, Secret China.
Well, yeah, let's start with Secret China, because that was on the show. You know, we were talking about the financial stuff and the China, spinning out of the China stuff in particular for the last month, really. And we weren't the only ones, but we definitely bought, because we were listening to the signal that Donald Trump was putting out. You know, it's not rocket science. It's just that there is a bit of an art. People have learned in this audience, there's a bit of an art to listening to that guy. And it's kind of amazing what happens when you do listen to him, and what happens when you do actually track the stuff that we've been tracking for years. We had suggested broadly that what we were going to see happen was Trump continuing to put pressure on the Federal Reserve, which he is. That there's no end in sight there. I think that's going to be a longer term narrative. But that Trump was going to be the first president to have surging stock market and surging asset prices. I think we're at the very early innings of this, but what are we at, May 14th right now? And compared to Liberation Day, which was it April 7th? Somebody in the chat, correct me. Within the last month, 5 weeks, where we saw like a 15-20% correction downward, we are up something like 5%. So we're not just even, we're up.
Yeah. So, I mean, what I think is most fascinating to me is like all this stuff that's going on right now. We've been talking about how this has already probably been agreed to for the most part. Like how this ends is already written down, and Trump pretty much said that himself. He's like, I don't need to make any deals. These people need to make deals with me. Like what I say is the deal, and it's just whether or not we want to be nice to these people. Like how they want this entire situation to end is going to end the way they want it to. It's just a matter of how they tell the story along the way. And Scott Bessent in particular, way back in October, before he was even nominated to be the Treasury Secretary, he had this article out there. He's doing this interview, and he was talking about the shadow Fed chair, which we haven't heard the end of Powell yet. He's still stuck in that pincer like we've been discussing. But ignoring the Powell aspect of this, he talks about tariffs, and let me share my screen, and how they're basically just a negotiating tool, which is exactly what they have been used for. Bessent has a nuanced view of Trump's idea for across-the-board tariffs in all countries, which he primarily sees as a negotiating position. That's exactly what they're used like. But he's all in for China tariffs, which Trump has said could rise to 60%. Bessent laid out his thinking on October 1st in a speech at the Grants Fall Conference. Blah, blah, blah. Trade with a centrally planned economy such as China's can never be truly free. Bessent said, if we open our markets to such a managed economy, we are actually importing their managed market structure, degrading the operation of our own free markets. He said, the global economy might need to shift to a model where the lowest tariffs are among the free market economies. And then all we've heard from Bessent the last few weeks is how like we are restructuring the global order when it comes to trade and tariffs and all these things, restructuring.
Yeah.
And then we have this landmark agreement from China and the United States. They were talking in, I think it was Geneva. Look at these guys seriously taking notes.
The IMF.
Love that. I want to find a video clip of him. I think this is it. Yeah, this is one. This is pretty much the same thing he was discussing back in October before he became nominated and before Trump was even elected in the fake election again.
We have a very good framework, and as I said during IMF week in Washington about 3 or 4 weeks ago, there is a possibility. It's not a certainty, but that, as Ray Dalio might say, we could do a big, beautiful rebalancing. President Trump wants to rebalance the American economy back to a manufacturing economy with high precision manufacturing. I think everyone agrees, including Chinese leadership, that they need to rebalance towards more of a consumption and consumer economy. And the dream scenario would be if somehow we could do that together.
Yeah, I haven't even seen that clip.
What?
But you know, I've been saying for months, Scott Bessent is just about the most signal guy out there in the current chapter of the War of Stories. If you go back even further than that, some of the clips of him from I think it was in the neighborhood of May 2024. He keeps using the term reset. You know, he's using rebalancing there, but he's been using reset. Trump recently used the term reset. You know, we're looking at a reset of trade. 2022, I had said that I think what Trump is going to be doing on the macro in his second public term is what I've been calling the good reset rather than the great reset. And this mirrors a lot of what Chris Paul talks about in terms of, you know, taking us all the way up to the edge of what the enemy's plan was going to be and then rug pulling that. The reason that you would do that, like that's not just to trick people. The reason you would do that is because ironically, a lot of the mechanistic levers that you would need to pull and the institutions and systems that you would need to transform to get us into the globalist Great Reset agenda are the same ones that you would need to pull and transform to get us out of the current globalist system. One small example of this would be both sides, the good guys and the bad guys, want a monetary reset. The bad guys want us to go into a central bank digital currency future. The good guys, I believe, want us to go into more of a Bitcoin future. It doesn't have to be only Bitcoin, but Bitcoin, stable coins, all this kind of stuff. Tether, Howard Lutnick, heavily involved with that project. And what did Trump do when he's kind of gone into the crypto realm? he not only is embracing Bitcoin with sovereign wealth funds, etc., strategic reserve, he is saying that a central bank digital currency will never happen. So now when you look at Scott Bessent saying that we're getting to a rebalancing, this was my controversial argument going back a couple of years of saying that China needs the decoupling just as much as the US needs the decoupling. And that is super unpopular, even in the alternative media, who can't stop saying China bad because that's how they've been programmed. When, again, you can't think of this in terms of who's leading China or the Chinese government. You have to think of, has the globalist system been good for the Chinese people? And the answer to that is no, because they've become an entirely exporting nation. They're essentially slave labor. So, if you had that premise, then like you and I were doing on this show, we're trying to project, all right, if our assumption is that Trump and Xi are actually working together, how might this play out? Just so happens to be that that premise was much more accurate than the opposite premise, which is why everyone in the mainstream media and the alternative financial media was wrong about this every single day for the last 6 weeks.
Yeah, and even beyond like whatever the agreement is, I mean, that's obviously important. I think it's just going to end up going back to pretty much what they had agreed to the first time around. I think Chris Paul has the same mindset on that. Like the phase one trade deal before it got derailed by COVID, you can go find it right now. And I wouldn't be surprised if we have a lot of the same things bullet pointed out. But beyond all that, kind of confirmation of behind the scenes stuff, like they were negotiating this trade deal in secret for weeks before they actually came to this Geneva Convention thing. And while publicly we were getting stories of, oh, Trump is mad and raised it 100%, and then China retaliates 100%, like back and forth. They were meeting in private, holding these negotiations, but they wanted the public aspect and the coverage of it to play out the same way it did. This is proof of like not just these two countries working together behind the scenes and like clearly on the same side in a lot of ways, but also they're playing the media. Like they're proving some of the narrative warfare aspects of this and how important the narrative is that there was this conflict, because at the end of the day, this is going to be a huge win for Trump and Xi and his economy, for him, his side of things, not the evil twin side. But this is a huge win that is allowed. It's going to allow Trump to look so much better. The fact that it was playing out publicly the way it was while the actuals were taking place privately. It says right here, 3 weeks ago, in the basement of the IMF headquarters, arranged under cover of secrecy. They didn't want these meetings public, but they were taking place while the narrative war was going on. It's amazing.
Yeah, and I'd even go a step further with what you laid out with the media. I mean, I took, on the one hand, a lot of them were idiots and didn't see what was going on, but I think that never assume ignorance when you could assume malice. I butchered that whole thing, right? Never ascribe to ignorance that which can be explained by malice. The media does not want a decoupling between the American and the Chinese system. When I say the system, that's what the best way to put this, I think, is we are not decoupling from each other. That's what Scott Bessent is really trying to get across to people, because there's a lot of people, even the alternative media, that are saying this is a decoupling between the US and China. I think I've even used that terminology, and it's not really what's going on. What they are doing is both the US and China are decoupling from a globalist system of trade that is being brokered by central banks, which is why this ties into, and why maybe people were confused at the time of like, why every time we're talking about China and trade wars and tariffs, do I keep bringing up the fact that Donald Trump has Jerome Powell and the Federal Reserve trapped? It's because the trade war is what has trapped the central bankers. And it's not just Trump that has them trapped, it's Xi Jinping. Remember, 1 week ago, before we got this like release valve of the announcement of a pause on the, by the way, these things haven't all been signed. Right now we're dealing with a pause in this. But China, the People's Bank of China, cut rates last week, which we talked about on last Wednesday's show. And that put the U.S. Federal Reserve in a more extreme version of the pincer that Trump had already locked them into. So that's the decoupling that's going on. And it's why it's logically consistent with Bessent's statements when he's talking about a rebalancing The media, my point there is that the media doesn't want this because their corporate masters don't want it because they're all globalists, right? All these media companies, as this community's been talking about for a decade, are all owned by globalist conglomerates. Media Matters, World Economic Forum, George Soros, like you name it. I already said WEF, like you name it, NGOs, USAID, etc. That's what all the media apparatus is.
Yep.
If nations start engaging in honest nationalist trade with each other, cooperative competition, which is the end goal here, the media will need to be subsist on a free market, which means they're going to have to be honest again. And none of them can afford to do that.
Yeah, and plus they just have a vested interest in Trump losing and failing. Like they don't care about America. They just care about Trump losing. The whole Biden saga thing and the book coming out from Tapper, Original Sin, how the Biden administration lied. It was not the media's fault. They don't care about America. They don't care about you. They care about their bottom line. And right now that is directly tied to Trump failing. So with all these tariff stories going on and all this the public narrative, every time the tariffs went up on one side, they were able to write a slew of headlines saying how this is going to be terrible. The stock market is going to crash. We are heading towards a recession. Everybody's going to die. Like your pets' heads are falling off. It's the worst thing in the world. And you would kind of see that reflected in the market. And then Trump would be like, it's probably a good time to buy stock.
Yep.
And all the while, behind the scenes, Trump knew that these negotiations were taking place. This was a trap for not just the Fed and Powell, but for the media as well.
Yep.
And here's Besant on, I think this is on Joe Scarborough talking about, whoops, that's the wrong video. Don't want to watch that again. This one.
Well, Joe, this is going to go where the president
like 2 days ago
wants it to go. I was in touch with him over the weekend, and he wants free trade, free and fair trade. We've had free trade, and as you said, that has not worked for the American people. There's something called the China shock, which has gutted our manufacturing sector, and China has a different form of government for us. They have a different economic model where they subsidize labor, they subsidize capital goods, and they have exported that to us and the rest of the world. We have put up tariffs to push back on that, so it will be a matter of what is the equilibrium level on tariffs, and also getting China to open their markets for American companies. Because China actually has a low tariff regime, but it is the non-tariff trade barriers that can be the most difficult to overcome. So we will be focusing on the non-tariff trade barriers and the subsidies, and the idea that China can become more open to American business, and the things that are sold into the U.S. Can not have the same level of subsidy. And no one wants to do a generalized decoupling, but we are going to do a strategic decoupling, because we realized during COVID that efficient supply chains were not secure supply chains. So with steel, with semiconductors, with medicines, with a couple of other strategic categories, we are going to have to become self-reliant again.
And that's what's so interesting too. One thing to point out before I pass it back to you is all the things he said there, and there's so much more than just those things, but steel, medicine, semiconductors, all those things, Trump laid the groundwork for our own self-reliance on these things within the first day of his administration. He signed a slew of executive orders, increasing our domestic production of steel, increasing our domestic production of lumber, increasing our domestic production of the whatever special minerals for the semiconductors and all those things and the chips. I mean, he did that. We just saw the medicine executive order, the drug prices one. He moved all that stuff home domestically before even going into the tariff wars, because those took about 2 months before we kicked those off. He needed the groundwork to be laid. And now those are also playing a factor in this stuff, because look at Canada, for instance. We buy 75% of our lumber from Canada, which is insane to me.
Doesn't make sense.
But we don't need to. And so we sign that executive order. We go to Canada and be like, we'll still buy lumber from you, but it's not going to be that much. But we don't have to buy any lumber from you. So it's up to you guys. You either play ball, or we'll cut our own damn trees down. We'll figure it out. It's the same way with everybody.
Absolutely, and it actually hits on another one of the more, like, it's not fully fleshed out, and I don't think it ever will be, but one of my less popular kind of talking points has been that, I don't think the COVID fake pandemic was engineered by patriots in white hats, but I do believe that they exploited it for our ends, and it's related to what you just talked about there. So one of the ways I kind of lay out one of the Hegelian dialectics that the good guys use is the sort of awakening dialectic, and how does the awakening process work on a micro level and on a macro level. And the way I write about this, I say there's the seeding phase that we talk about a lot, then there's a germination phase, and then there's a harvest phase, right? And the way I think about it is the first Trump administration was the seeding phase. He was talking about lumber and steel and semiconductors and rare earth minerals in his first administration. He started the trade war with Xi Jinping, as you pointed out earlier, in 2018, in his first administration. It didn't get across the finish line all the way like it did this time, but he seeded the public mind with the problems as he saw them at that time. The Biden administration, and more to the point of this conversation, the COVID pandemic era, germinated all of the problems that Trump had seeded. Specifically, had anybody in this audience realized what a massive deal semiconductors were before you heard about them every hour of every day for about 6 months straight in 2020? Right? Like, everyone all of a sudden found out that they're in your toaster, they're in your fridge, they're in your car, they're in everything that we have, and some little island in the Pacific makes all of them, essentially. So isn't that convenient that the COVID era basically highlighted the US dependence on China in the globalist system, and conversely, our lack of production of all of these things? And now Trump comes in Trump 2.0, and this is the harvest. Now he gets to cash in all of the seeding and all the germination of all those talking points. And to your point about lumber, it's no longer controversial for Trump to come out there and say, we're just going to do this ourselves, because now, like, normal Americans have all been affected by this. This is a massive reason why the US housing market has never recovered from what it was, recovered downward, from what happened during COVID. It was because of the cost that went into building a home went up by like 50% in the last 5 years. So, these are things that we can,
that too.
Yeah. And, I think, one of the funny things that I think we're going to get here in the year and change ahead, we keep talking about like a boom. Trump talks about a boom for the golden age, but we're going to get a boom and a deflationary environment at the same time. Yep. Where things are going to cost less, but the American people are going to be making more. So it's like, and all of this happens, the only way all of this happens is with the exact kind of rebalancing that Trump has been calling for literally since the 80s, if you play those clips that are now going around.
Yeah. I'm curious to see how the rest of these trade deals play out too. It seems like they're all being timed to release at the same time. He says he's got them all ready. And I'm curious to see how it ties into the big, beautiful package that Mike Johnson has that Trump keeps talking about. I wish somebody would talk about my package the way Trump talks about Johnson's package.
Yeah.
No actual movement on that thing. We just get stories every single day about, some tense negotiations, even though we don't need negotiations. We have the majority in both houses and they're passing it as a reconciliation. We just need a simple majority, just pass the damn thing. But they're not doing anything in Congress. It's a joke right now. But it's all like working together. It seems like either Congress is fully working against Trump, which I could totally buy, same with the judiciary, but I'm still leaving some chance that they're like just being held back for now and waiting to like unleash it all while it's timed with the tariffs and all these other things. That's probably a little conspiratorial, and they probably all just suck ass because our elections are rigged. That's the most.
It could be both.
Could be both. Don't know. But I'm curious to see, like, we have the External Revenue Service and talk of Trump lowering taxes and getting rid of taxes on people making under a certain threshold. There's just so many things that we were promised, and they're all connected, especially the financial aspects of it and the world trade stuff. And we're seeing some of these initial deals being signed and meetings taking place in the Middle East, because that's all connected too. Like if you unleash the energy production from the Middle East through alliances and trades and all these things, that has worldwide ramifications as well in terms of a free market economy. I mean, the whole global trade restructuring that Besson is talking about does not just involve us and China. It involves everybody. And those deals are all taking place right now. Really, the two holdouts from this whole thing are Israel and Ukraine, Zelensky, which are, both kind of proxies in my
kind of proxies of Europe. Like they're kind of all in that same soup. The two major proxies of Europe. But even before even touching on that, I think one of the narratives that I've been most fascinated by, I've kind of stopped writing about it for a little while now, but that I was writing about last year a lot, was the idea, and I've spoken to General Quast about this quite a bit. A few of us have talked to him quite a bit about these things. But if you look at some of the narratives that are operating even below the conscious kind of awareness of a lot of people in the truth community, like we're looking at the Middle East tour and peace deals and trade deals and all this kind of stuff. It's big stuff. It's big narratives. Like it's on center stage right now. And this community looks at that stuff with a different lens than the mainstream media. But there are little previews of what's coming that is operating below that. And one of the ones that I kind of picked up on a few years ago was nuclear. The idea of, somebody like Jordan Sather's been talking about for a long, long time. The idea that we have been in an energy, you mentioned energy, we've been in a literally retarded energy environment for generations. I've been calling this the Eisenhower timeline. So I really feel that we got pulled off of the timeline we were supposed to be on from Dwight Eisenhower into John F. Kennedy. They wanted to go full bore into nuclear energy, and everything from Oppenheimer and the Manhattan Project to 3 Mile Island and Chernobyl. Name your catastrophe. Like every decade, there was a catastrophe supposedly that pulled us off of this timeline. I think that threaded into the resurfacing of everything from the Iran nuclear deal to Chinese nuclear agreements to Trump's constant references to denuclearization. If you read the tea leaves, this is all happening at the same time that Trump's DOE secretary, Chris Wright, is signing nuclear energy deals all over the world.
Yeah.
Like there was one that just was signed with, I think, the nation of Georgia. Then there's one with Armenia. What'd you say?
I think that's 2 weeks ago. Yeah.
Yeah. So what I think's going on here is that I think the denuclearization is going to be a narrative all about the de-weaponization of nuclear energy, but it's going to be running concurrent with a surge into nuclear energy production. And that's going to be part of a lot of this stuff. Like a lot of the stuff that you're seeing in these Middle Eastern trade deals, I think the Middle Eastern nations like Saudi Arabia are being told to take an off-ramp away from OPEC and the oil cartel, which has been responsible for a lot of global conflict and, that the deep states relied on, right? And to transition them into nuclear, because that's something that it doesn't matter where you are. It doesn't become this finite resources game. If you can get every country sustaining on nuclear energy before we get into crazier energies in the future, you disincentivize a lot of source code for global conflict that we've had.
Yeah, and what's most interesting about that, what you just said there, is one of the primary beneficiaries of oil trade is Saudi Arabia. Like they've gotten extremely wealthy because of oil, and they appear to be on board. They are bros with Trump, and that's going to be our next topic. So we can kind of segue into that. Key takeaway, again, a couple things. We're probably getting the same trade deal we had phase one back in the day. China's purchasing more money more stuff from us, and commitment to open up access for U.S. financial service firms, all these other things. It's going to be very similar to that, I would wager. And then they were discussing this stuff in private so that the narrative could play out publicly, that there was conflict. Very beneficial. But now let's go to, I want to find the right clip.
The Sovereign Alliance clip? I have
I think
a
this is
short
the right
version
one.
of it.
I think this is it.
Transcending the ancient conflict.
Yep, this is it. And so I'm basically going to do exactly what I did on my show the other day, like this in the UN clip, and we'll talk about it, because this is so good. What Trump says here, in a lot of ways, confirms the Sovereign Alliance stuff, confirms his devolution term and what took place. It's just so good. So we'll listen to this, and I'm going to pull up another video for us to listen to, and we'll splice it all together. It'll be great.
Before our eyes, a new generation of leaders is transcending the ancient conflicts of tired divisions of the past and forging a future where the Middle East is defined by commerce, not chaos, where it exports technology, not terrorism, and where people of different nations, religions, and creeds are building cities together, not bombing each other out of existence. We don't want that.
Pretty sure he's talking about Israel bombing Gaza right there. Just
Yes,
FYI.
feels like it.
This is the one where he talks about forever enemies, right? I think this is.
If it's not, I have a short version of that after.
See, this clip, Elon Musk is clapping normally. I don't know if you saw him clapping
I did see
abnormally the
that.
other night.
And it's crucial for the wider world to note this great transformation has not come from Western interventionists or flying people in beautiful planes giving you lectures on how to live and how to govern your own affairs. No, the gleaming marvels of Riyadh and Abu Dhabi were not created by the so-called nation builders, neocons, or liberal nonprofits like those who spent trillions and trillions of dollars failing to develop Kabul, Baghdad, so many other cities. Instead, the birth of a modern Middle East has been brought by the people of the region themselves, the people that are right here, the people that have lived here all their lives, developing your own sovereign countries.
The reason I like what he says there, and we're probably going to need that other clip, by the way, because I don't know if this has it. But the reason I like what he said there, it is. When Trump came out and stood next to Netanyahu like a month or two ago and is like, I'm going to build the Riviera of Gaza, and half of Twitter lost their mind. The same half of Twitter is ironically losing their mind right now because Trump has turned his shoulder to Netanyahu.
Yep.
But maybe it's not the same people. No, a lot of people love that.
Largely the same.
Whatever. People are always freaking out over the Israel stuff. Anyway, when Trump said that, we were one of the few that were like, hey, Trump doesn't actually want to do this. He wants to encourage the people of the Middle East, like the Saudi Arabia, like Qatar, Egypt, UAE, whatever. We want them to get involved and take care of this themselves. The regions of responsibility. That's what he's talking about right here in this aspect of the speech.
Yeah, like verbatim what we said at the time. And, you know, this is something we might talk about later tonight as well. But this is one of many examples where it's not because we're saying we're geniuses and are looking at 5D chess. Sometimes it's that. But most of the time, it's because we just know what the first principles are that Donald Trump espouses. And when he says something that contradicts those principles, he always ends up backing off on it and, you know, he baits these things out and allows them to fill the battle space that he leaves behind. He's done that a million times, Russian maneuver defense, and he does it on a narrative level. And we said he was going to do it here, and this is the final stage of him doing that.
Proof of the pudding's in the eating.
Exactly.
Pursuing your own unique visions and charting your own destinies in your own way. It's really incredible what you've done. In the end, the so-called nation builders wrecked far more nations than they built, and the interventionists were intervening in complex societies that they did not even understand themselves. They told you how to do it, but they had no idea how to do it themselves.
I gotta respond to a troll in the chat.
I've got the other clip.
You got the other clip?
Yeah. All right, so that one is pretty great. I mean, before we get on to this clip, yeah, gotta love the socks, right?
I love the sock counts.
Yeah, we know, guys. We know how it works. So it's that little segment that he just did right there it's perfect because it takes aim at the entire globalist system, and what you just mentioned before the clip, or in the middle of it, it perfectly hits all segments of the uniparty. It hits the uniparty right and the uniparty left. It's the type of first print, that whole speech, that like 40-minute speech, was such a first principles masterclass by Trump because it was virtually unassailable by any segment of the media that wants to be taken seriously. The only thing that they could assault is saying, well, I don't think this stuff's going to end up working. But in terms of the ideas being presented, he's like, I want peace. I don't want American interventionism. I'm not in favor of the military-industrial complex. I'm all about sovereignty and self-determination. It's like very difficult things to combat. But this clip here, for me personally, one of my all-time favorites, I would say, in the InfoWar, because he just won't say it. He won't say the words, but he might as well have said, Sovereign Alliance are my bros.
Should I just play my clip from the other day? Because
Does it have all of it? Does it have this segment?
Yeah, it's like 2 minutes long, and it intersplices the UN stuff too.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. I'm pretty sure this. We're talking about the same one.
I have never believed in having permanent enemies. I am different than a lot of people think. I don't like permanent enemies, but sometimes you need enemies to do the job, and you have to do it right. Enemies get you motivated. In fact, some of the closest friends of the United States of America are nations we fought wars against in generations past. And now they're our friends and our allies. Yet
I want to do a little throwback here.
the
Trump's UN
future
speech.
does not belong to an independent nation. Each country special. America is ready to embrace friendship with all who genuinely seek peace and respect. Many of America's closest friends today were once our greatest foes. The United States has never believed in permanent enemies.
Maybe we can even stop it there. And then maybe you can just play the full one. But that part right here, it's just easier because I couldn't find my other UN speech thing.
Yeah.
The fact that he used the same language in both speeches, I think is...
Oh, yeah.
It's let's play the full clip from this, and then we can come back and talk about it.
What I would say is the Sovereign Alliance clip.
Yeah.
I'm here today not merely to condemn the past chaos of Iran's leaders, but to offer them a new path and a much better path toward a far better and more hopeful future. As I've shown repeatedly, I am willing to end past conflicts and forge new partnerships for a better and more stable world, even if our differences may be very profound, which obviously they are in the case of Iran. I have never believed in having permanent enemies. I am different than a lot of people think. I don't like permanent enemies, but sometimes you need enemies to do the job, and you have to do it right. Enemies get you motivated. In fact, some of the closest friends of the United States of America are nations we fought wars against in generations past, and now they're our friends and our allies.
So who's he possibly talking about when he talks about people we fought wars against in the past that are now our friends and allies? Because I'm pretty sure that's only Russia.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Russians is the biggie, but I think he's talking about Iran as well.
For sure.
You know, not wars, right? But the U.S. interventionism. The clip you played where he's talking about interventionism, that's specifically poignant to the people of the Middle East.
Japan.
Japan. It also colors Trump's meetings today with Qatar and Syria. Lots of interesting stuff going on with the Syria one. That one is absolutely fascinating. Maybe we can discuss a little bit, but generally speaking, when he straight up says it there. Some of the closest friends of the United States of America are nations we fought wars against in generations past. Now they're our friends and our allies. Obviously, you've been talking about Sovereign Alliance for years. The Q drops seeded the idea of is Russia and China working with POTUS against the collectivist enemy, against the deep state, right? But you can expand that further with what's been going on here. Ghost talks a lot about Saudi Arabia, how important they are to this whole alliance. But one of the keys of when I wrote the Righteous Russia series, a lot of the beginning of that research was all about the engineering that's been done a century ago to poison the US and Russia against each other. So, this speech, Trump basically brings it full circle. But remember, a few months ago on the show, or a few weeks ago, whenever it was, we were pointing out a True Social post that Trump had where he was talking about a phone call with Putin, phone call with Zelensky. And it was this really long post where he said, he referenced the ancient alliances or the old alliances between the United States and Russia. He referenced how many people the Russians had lost in the wars in the 1900s. We talked, I think, last week or the week before about the fact that, last week, Trump designates Victory Day in World War II over the Nazis as May 8th. And on May 9th, the Russians celebrate their Victory Day over the Nazis. And Xi Jinping is in attendance during Russian Victory Day. So you've got like the three legs of the Sovereign Alliance there, all making a huge point to celebrate victory over the Nazis last week with Victory Day. And now this week, we've got Trump saying, our oldest enemies are now our closest friends. One of the ways I've been putting it for the last few years is that we are, Chris Paul uses the term total inversion a lot. One of the inversions that I think that we are on the cusp of seeing the normie mind programmed with is the total inversion of the Axis and Allies paradigm. You can essentially take the World War II Axis and Allies and flip them, and you will get much closer to what's actually been going on. If you take the Russians and, the Chinese and all this kind of stuff, Iran, and you flip that around, you figure out that it was the U.S., it was the Western globalist hegemon that overthrew the Iranian regime in the late 70s, destabilized the Middle East on purpose, killed the czars in the early 1900s. It was like these were all clandestine operations, obviously. But it's been the same thing all along, and we're seeing a complete inversion of that. But for Trump to just come pretty close to stating it outright that we're seeing this inversion is pretty great. I think it means that, we are entering the late innings of the public story of these deals.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm willing to go that far and say, I have no idea when this wraps up, because I thought it would have wrapped up 7.5 years ago. So right. No idea if we're actually entering the final stages. He's just being a lot more blunt about what is happening here if you're willing to pay attention and listen to it. And one of the things that, I see, not just going back to World War II and flipping stuff, it's who the media has painted to be the bad guys. Like if you go back to 2001, when the trade centers were taken down by our own government, they went and blamed that on basically Middle East. Like me growing up, I don't even remember what would have been 11. It's fourth grade or something at that time. I didn't know where Iraq was. I didn't know where Afghanistan or Iran or any of those things. I just knew Middle East. We're going to the war in the Middle East. And at the same time, it's Russia boogeyman. We had the Cold War, the space race, all that stuff. And when Hillary got in there, all these Putin bad, it's communist country, all this dictatorship. Those are the two big boogeyman that the media and the establishment has created for us to constantly be in conflict with. That is who I think Trump is directly going and turning into our own allies. He is saying, I don't care what the media said. There's no such thing as forever enemies. I will make peace with you, and you guys will make peace in your area. And we don't have to be the enemies that they want us to be. It doesn't have to be that way. Yeah. Trump is going to battle against the establishment narratives and the establishment itself just by working with his people directly.
Totally. And I found that post. I won't read the whole thing here, but if you think of some of the wording in this post from Trump from about a month and a half ago and compare it to what we're talking about here, it's after he had his phone call with Putin, which again, we believe that these deals are long done, talked about what they talked about. And I loved this section of it. We both reflected on the great history of our nations and the fact that we fought so successfully together in World War II, remembering that Russia lost tens of millions of people and we lost so many. We talked about the strengths of our respective nations, the great benefit that we will someday have in working together. But first, we both agreed we want to stop the millions of deaths taking place. So, talks about all that kind of stuff. One of the big tells here of why are we so confident that the deals are done, besides the fact that, Drops told us, etc. Trump's been kind of telling us he wants to do this since his first term. You've also been able to read between the noise and look at the signal in the noise to the fact that Dmitry Peskov has been talking about joint economic projects with the United States, threaded in between the idea that we supposedly aren't even on the cusp of a peace deal with them yet, right? They're already talking about like a century of economic cooperation in the Arctic, energy cooperation, mutual construction of railways that they were supposed to construct in the 1800s before the Civil War, also done by the globalists, interfered with that. Matt Arrett has a lot of fascinating research on that stuff. So Lincoln probably was a bad guy, by the way, but that's neither here nor there. But, this stuff has been possible to see coming from a long way off. And while there is more than just the US and Russia on the game board, they truly are the keystones. They are kinetically the most powerful nations in the world. And from sort of an optical story lens, I think that a reunification, a renormalization is the wording. Trump and Putin have been using the term renormalization of relationships between the US and Russia. We're talking a century before since that's been the case. Yeah. So the power of that is orders of magnitude greater than the power of the US making peace even with Iran and stuff like that. One more point would be, when it comes to the Middle East, he's not talking about Russia yet. We're going to get there. We're going to have a whole big dramatic story, just like the Middle East tour, I think, with Russia when that stuff actually does go public, as we've been talking about. But the Middle East is huge too, because I think the key that Trump is saying in the clip you played is he's not just talking about the last 20, 30 years. I think he's really talking about, the Middle East has been the place where the globalists have engineered wars forever. I mean, going back to the Crusades, if you look into that stuff. So that is the type of transformation that we're on the cusp of. And I was glad to see that even on the normie layers, people were like almost shocked at just the hopeful messaging and the direct messaging coming out of Trump, where he's flying around the Middle East just being like, why don't we just all be friends and stop fighting, and presenting this path forward in a way that we have not seen anybody say about the Middle East in literally generations.
Well, I mean, technically, he kind of did the same thing 8 years ago, whatever, his first term. Like he did the tour of the Middle East, and he said a lot of things. He did the sword dances, and it was a really cool trip. Was it that trip that he went to China too? I don't remember. He was like one of the first trips to go to China. But what I think, do you follow Alexander Dugin on Twitter? He's a good follow. He talks about a lot of the stuff. Like he's the Russian version of like a ghost of base Patrick Henry in a lot of ways. Like very direct, talking about what's going on. And I view things in a lot of ways like he does, because some people believe there's this more direct and full control, and I don't. I do believe like the globalists and the bad guys are still like making moves and trying to stop things if they can. I think that's a lot of the reason we haven't seen some of the peace deals, especially the Russia-Ukraine one, made yet. And, that's why things are working out with Israel and Gaza and the Middle East. Like there are still forces working against it. And the reason for that, I think, is because I don't think we have full control of the narrative battle space yet either. Like going back to the Rich Higgins memo and the battle space and everything. If we had full control of one or the other, full control, we could directly control the timeline more efficiently. I think some things we have to play out in a longer timeline until certain things fall into place. Like some of that might even be just public consensus, right? When things get untenable, that's when you can make some of those moves. I think that's what we're seeing, especially with like Russia. Like it's obvious that Trump and Russia and Putin are like bros now. Like that's been obvious for a while. So why hasn't this thing ended yet? Because I still think there are forces on the other side of this. But that is what's most interesting about Trump going to the Middle East first, is because that has taken off the Israel game board piece. Israel being left out of these negotiations and Trump coming out and signing some sort of deal with Iran, or at least them being open to negotiations, Trump stopping bombing the Houthis. Like, all these things are very anti-Israel moves, and Israel's not even taking part of it. It's very similar to Trump saying to UK, like, yeah, we're going to negotiate this peace between Russia and Ukraine. You guys have nothing to do with it. It's very similar what he's doing in the Middle East, leaving Israel out of it.
Yeah, what's also great from a narrative level of what you point out here is that I think one of the master strokes Trump hits with this Iran deployment, the Iran narrative deployment that seems to have resulted in this response by Iran, is that he didn't talk about Israel. You know, you and I believe that he was largely referencing Israel. I think he was referencing the whole globalist system. But when he's talking about interventionism and we don't want people bombing each other, we want them making peace in the Middle East, I agree with you that he was probably referencing Israel there. But I think it was a great move that he did not mention Israel because, again, I think Trump lays these narrative traps. Nothing he said about Iran in that speech, if you are a good actor, a good moral actor, you can't disagree with anything he said there. He didn't endorse the Iranian regime. He didn't endorse Iranian history. He didn't endorse the Ayatollahs. He didn't endorse, Soleimani or any of that kind of stuff, right? All he said was that basically the past is the past, but I believe that we have an opportunity to move into a different future with Iran, and that should be a public stance that even Israel has to adopt, because no country can save face while pushing forward and saying, no matter what happens, there is no possible pathway to peace for us. None of them admit that out loud. They always say, oh, like, these are the reasons we can't have peace right now. But this is another trap that Trump lays, where as he's giving this speech, you've got Bibi Netanyahu literally wearing military fatigues and vests, talking about the latest campaign in Gaza as probably part of the Greater Israel Project. Trump doesn't need to talk about what Bibi Netanyahu is doing. He just needs it to be contrasted with what he is doing and the narratives that he is forwarding. And I think the same thing is happening in Ukraine, where every time Putin opens his mouth, he's talking about peace negotiations. And Donald Trump, meanwhile, the EU can't stop talking about war. All they want to do is mobilize for war against Russia. Trump doesn't have to talk about the EU. All he has to do is talk about peace, and all of the warmongers and the Ben Shapiros of the world, etc., get to just expose themselves as not being in favor of the thing that everybody else wants.
Yeah. So 2 things here. This deal or what Iran said here anyway, is pretty groundbreaking. Iran is prepared to sign a nuclear agreement with President Trump in exchange for the immediate lifting of U.S. economic sanctions. So to me, right off the bat, they want to get into the economic game that Trump is building in the Middle East. Like, they see the writing on the wall. They see that what the tariffs are doing. They see all this stuff. And they're like, we want a piece of that action. We will stop our pursuit of nuclear missiles and just let us into the game. And then they go on further and say, I'll read this. This Shakamini guy or whatever said they would agree to permanently forego nuclear weapons, eliminate its stockpile of highly enriched uranium, restrict enrichment to low levels necessary for civilian energy, and allow international inspectors to monitor compliance if the sanctions are removed. They said, asked whether Iran would sign a deal today under those terms. He said, yes, it's still possible if Americans act as they say, for sure, we can have better relations. It can lead to a better situation in the future. He said, he also warned that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu could attempt to sabotage a potential agreement through back-channel pressure in Washington. If the Americans remove the Bibi effect, they can easily sign the deal, he said. And that is kind of what Trump did before even going over there and announcing this deal. He kind of already turned his back on Netanyahu and removed that effect. But that is pretty interesting that we have Iran saying, hey, America, you are controlled by Israel, and we'll stop all this stuff. Just agree to these terms. Like, that's crazy.
And I think it's so great because it's almost like this Iranian deployment. It's a perfect response to Trump. And as Chris always talks about good twin, evil twin, he had a great post I saw right before we went live talking about
Who did?
Chris.
Okay.
I'll pull it up just so I don't butcher it because it's a good one.
Yeah, and you typically butcher things other people say, so
yeah,
that's safe.
I won't read the relevant bit here. He's talking about, you know, the good twin, evil twin dynamic, but I think it's especially relevant to what we're talking about with. Oops.
You got to read. Oh, that is a long one.
Really
Might as well just read the whole thing.
All right.
It's going to be
Chris
good.
Paul. He says Qatar, a regime proxy state, is now fully aligned with America. Trump and the coalition, however informal, of sovereign nationalist leaders leading sovereign nationalist anti-regime states. Would it kill you to use the term sovereign alliance, Chris? I'm just saying. But other than that,
no, I think we should reframe it to sovereign nationalist leaders. I like that.
He says sovereign 3 times. No, it's what. It should be clear that Trump is not selling arms and making deals with the same factions of Qataris and adjacent interests that the Bushes, Clintons, Obamas, or the fake President Joe Biden were dealing with. This is again proof of the necessity of the good twin, evil twin lens and paradigm rather than a constant regime-inculcated focus on the names of countries. That's what I wanted to key in on here. Now apply this to who was receiving arms in Ukraine via Trump versus the evil twin regime faction controlling Kyiv, and the whole Ukraine war takes on an entirely different meaning, a meaning that is inaccessible when focused on country names rather than actual sides. It's never better to hold on to normie retardation for the sake of safety in numbers. It will fail every time. To cling to this too tightly for too long leaves people looking like Mark Levin, Seth Dillon, James Lindsay, Ben Shapiro, Jordan Peterson, and the vast majority of Twitter and truther influencers wasting everyone's time for money and misleading everyone in service of forces they pretend don't exist. They're all way behind the times and grasping for relevance, having preferred their wrong and fake consensus over rational analysis. Worse, because they're horrified of admitting that the people they wrote off were right the whole time. They're doubling down. This is the same thing the Trump deranged have done for 10 years, and they're doing it for the same reason. Sad.
And what he's talking about writing us off is like this whole woke right push is directly targeting people like Badlands who speak about the truth and speak about what's really going on and all the globalist stuff. Like they don't want you looking into us. They're basically calling us woke liberals. They're equating us to the way they are. It's insane. But anyway, keep going.
And the reason I thought of that rant by him is, there's a lot of great stuff in there, but what I specifically liked was that he's talking about the names of nation, and we deal with this all the time, even earlier in the show when I'm talking about Trump and China, you know, the globalist trade system was bad for China. When you say those words, there's a massive portion of the MAGA audience that reacts emotionally because they're like, no, China bad. Like even Trump is saying China bad. And again, you have to do what Chris is saying there, and you have to understand that there is China, as Trump says, there's China, the globalist regime, CCP China, that is the globalist oligarchy that sold out their peoples. And then there is China, which is Xi Jinping's nationalist sovereign state that has imprisoned tens of thousands of CCP officials, is engaged in a trade war that is resulting in the rapid offshoring of the globalist oligarchy, such as Apple, Microsoft, etc., out of their country. If you are only able to do what James Lindsay and Jordan Peterson do and talk about China as a nation or Russia as a nation as we've known them historically, then you literally can't engage with the ideas that we're talking about, which means you literally can't engage with what's actually happening. And the reason I thought of all that is with the Iran statement that you read there. If you can't get out of your programming of what Iran is, you can't see that everything the Iranians are saying there, to your point, is 100% true and fair and accurate. Like they're just saying, as long as you guys in the US stop listening to Israel, we can actually have peace in this region. And if you don't understand that when Iran has been attacking people and causing terrorist attacks, etc., it's probably not Iran that has been doing these things. It's probably the same insurgency that's been active in all of these nations and always has been.
Probably the CIA or Israel itself, false flags, all these things. Like, who knows for sure? Maybe someday we'll get an answer. But this all comes back to as well, like how many of our congressmen are dual citizens with Israel? How many of our congressmen are on the payroll of the lobbyist AIPAC from whatever? And it's not just, I mean, there's other countries doing that too, but they seem to be the most impactful. But yeah, like they're spot on. Iran is not lying about if you remove the BB effect, which we should like make shirts like that, like remove the BB effect, or like BB sucks. BB's the worst. Like stuff like that.
I am mad about that he's besmirching the good name I've built.
Well, yeah, you're just grifting off his name, I suppose. He probably doesn't like you very much.
It was an inverse grift.
Yeah, but anyway, they're directly telling the truth. If we remove that problem, those problems, which if you ask a congressman about it, which I have, they
get a little squirmy.
They get a little squirmy, and they don't give you a direct answer. Like, I totally agree with you that dual citizenship is bad, but let me tell you for 2 minutes absolutely nothing about what you just asked. That's what they do.
I also think that Iran statement, I'm not saying all these pincers are always intentional, but they definitely are, I think. But what that does is imagine the type of sort of MAGA personality that is wise to the Israel stuff. They're not Zionists. They're actually anti-Zionists, but they're not really plugged into the stuff that this community talks about. Those guys are having a weird day because they are super against Israel. And when I say that, I mean Israel's influence over American foreign policy. They're super worried about Israel's influence over Donald Trump, think you're totally real and not fake influencers like Ian Carroll, etc. And they're not really supposed to be in favor of Iranian regimes, but now the Iranian regime is saying that stuff about Israel. I think what we're going to start seeing here is Trump waits until the right moment to make his public turns, to make his public face turns or heel turns. He's going to be affecting a face turn with Russia. He's just starting it with Iran right here. He's going to do the same thing in reverse with Israel. He's going to have a heel turn with Netanyahu that he's already been seeding, and Ghost has been talking about this for years, where Trump gets to... He already did this with Zelensky, by the way. If you want to know what is going to happen narratively with Trump and Bibi Netanyahu, all you have to do is look at the story arc of Volodymyr Zelensky, and it's going to be the same thing. He's going to say, we're on your side, we're on your side, we're on your side. You're being a little unreasonable. Now we're on the other side. And that's basically where he's at with Ukraine. That's where he's probably going to get. Because if he does all this narrative work here and gets Iran to the table in the Middle East, who do you think are going to be the ones who don't want to sign the deal? It's not going to be the Iranians. So
yeah, that's what we've just been saying. Like, and he's already got him to the table. Again, secret talks. Witkoff has been there, just like we were doing secret talks with China about the trade stuff. Witkoff has been holding secret talks with Iran for like a month now, and they're ready to go. They've agreed to it basically in principle. It's just a matter of getting everybody else on board. And Israel will not sign this thing. I don't think they will. Yeah. So that's going to be the next most interesting, like, narrative deployment. Like you said, Trump's in the Middle East right now. He's doing a tour of a bunch of states, countries, whatever, 3 of them. He may even stop up and pop up and go see Putin and Zelensky in Turkey. Who knows? But nowhere he's not going to go. Nowhere he's not going to go while he's there is to our greatest ally, Israel. He's not going to go there.
Now, what's going to be most interesting to watch for this community is the commentary from certain people that we already named. You know, a lot of the people coining the woke right terminology, the new mainstream media, as Chris would call them, all the biggest podcasters in the world on YouTube. And it's also there's the people who accuse Trump of being a Zionist. And it's also going to be really interesting to see the commentary of people that have been Israel war hawks in the truth community, who have been gleefully celebrating everything that Israel's been doing for the last 2+ years, and talking about how Trump is going to do everything that they want, and they're our greatest ally, like you just said. So if and when Trump does kind of this public heel turn and starts putting the screws to them a little bit, how is that commentary going to evolve? Is Trump going to be seen as very mean to our greatest ally?
Well, I think that's an interesting point, because I don't think they're going to be allowed to really evolve. They're going to have to be, because the reason, like, most of these people are probably being paid by Israel in some fashion. Like,
there's some true believers.
You look at DC Drano, And the fact that him and the Binder Brigade thing, and he was taking money from an app called Influenceable. His picture was on the website until it got taken down after it got exposed. Like, these people take money to hold positions online. None of these people are speaking honestly. None of them. They're making tons and tons of money, but they're told what to do. They have boundaries of how far they can go in one direction or the other. Look at Tim Pool when they were talking about the missiles. Do you remember that? Like, Tim Pool, and well, it doesn't really matter where the missiles come from. You know what? I should find that clip quick, because this is a great example of what I'm talking about.
How's Tenet Media going, Tim? Took that Russian cheese real quick.
And okay. Two things here. First, did you see the thing where Tim Pool was on with Netanyahu, or like he went to a secret meeting?
Yep. I couldn't believe he said that with a straight face.
Yeah.
He said that like somebody going, I know this is going to be the next major controversy that they hold over my head, so I'm going to try to disarm it far in advance.
Let's just play the clip here. This is so good.
I wasn't here. I got late word that I was invited to a private roundtable meeting with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. It was under what's called Chatham House rules. For those that are not familiar, this means that you cannot reveal anybody who attended, nor attribute anything to any one individual, as they can deny it, and they would. However, what I love about what the White House is currently doing, when you bring together a bunch of influencers and podcasters who don't know much about journalism culture, or whatever you want to call it, not that we respect it tremendously, most people didn't know what Chatham House meant. So with all due respect, it's funny because they bring us into the Blair House, which is where Netanyahu was staying. And immediately people are walking around with their cameras, their phones up. They actually took our phones from us. And I legit thought they would maintain Chatham House rules, meaning you can't quote the prime minister, you can't quote his officials and the other people who were there, but you can report what was said generally. If you wanted an official quote on a specific matter, you would then ask an official once the meeting was wrapped, and they'd provide you the exact quote. Or they would just say outright, like, we ain't putting our quotes on.
So Tim Pool got invited to, like, and who knows who else is there, but he admits that he was meeting with Netanyahu. He's one of the guys that's
influencers.
He's going to have a very tough time with how things are about to play out. It's going to be a great exposure op for a lot of the conning people. But here's a good example of what I'm talking about. This lady brings up the USS Liberty, which was Israel bombing a United States vessel back in the 40s, trying to draw us into a further conflict with Egypt, I think. We did a whole basis of conspiracies on this. And check out how he responds when they talk about where the missiles originated from.
Dude, I'm concerned with having American aircraft carriers over there. Like, what I keep being told about the USS Liberty. That's something with the Israeli government.
No, you should. No. Wait. You should be careful about that.
Allegedly, the Israeli Air Force jet fighter aircraft.
I mean, they did end up paying out the American government.
So I'm concerned, like, false flag operation, like a missile comes out of Gaza.
Oh, no, it
and hits
doesn't.
carriers, but it was actually an Israeli missile.
Well,
I don't want. We should get out of there.
It doesn't. But let me stop you there. It doesn't matter where the missile comes from.
That's weird, huh? Holy shit.
Such a good clip. Such a good clip.
Oh man, well
Have you not
edited.
seen that
Whoever
before?
put that. No, I had not seen that. And man, when having a normie on your podcast goes wrong, like
yeah,
that poor kid there who's obviously like the resident idiot of that Tim Pool always has one. Like he has like a much dumber version of himself that he can
that's why you're
seem
here.
way smarter around. Yeah, I'll take that. I'll just let that one.
I was going to say who that really is on Badlands, but I didn't want to hurt any feelings. So, let the chat guess.
That guy though was being earnest. He had a moment of earnest honesty, going like, "Hey, did Israel attack a U.S. battleship back in the 40s?" Like, it doesn't matter who attacked us.
We should be careful here. Let's be careful here. I want to stop you right here. It's the same thing to do with election fraud. Like,
oh my god!
This is what we're going to see in the very near future as the Israel narrative implodes and the supporting Israel narrative implodes.
Yeah.
You're going to have a certain group of people, some of them in elected office, elected, I say that in quotes.
Yeah.
And then mainstream accounts propped up on Twitter, and maybe that's exactly why Elon Musk is allowing these accounts to be so big and almost exclusively engaged with these accounts. Because
I hope so.
That turn is going to destroy these people.
Oh yeah,
and expose these people, and yeah, it's going to be fun to watch. And that's
You
why
know,
I love what we have at Badlands, because we can say whatever the fuck we want. And
you know what? And it gets
doesn't matter.
it gets hard sometimes. Not to say what we want, but just the shrapnel, right? Like, and people, this whole audience, you've taken shrapnel along with us for years from various factions, etc., from within, from without. But you know, we always just try to keep each other going at those times and be like, you know what? Just saying stuff that we think, whether or not we end up being right about it, is far less important than the fact that we honestly believe the things we are saying on these shows. And man, like, these other people do not believe what they're saying. And that's what gets you. That gets you much more than whether or not you're factually correct about something. Because if you've been doing shows, even on Badlands, and talking about how the Palestinians are evil and, you know, Israel's our greatest ally, and just repeating Tim Pool talking points ad nauseum, and then this happens, what the fuck are you going to do from there? You have but two choices before you. You either prostrate yourself at the feet, prostrate yourself.
Prostate yourself.
You can prostate yourself too.
Prostate exam.
Yeah, you can prostrate yourself at the feet of Donald Trump and the MAGA movement and beg for forgiveness. Beg for forgiveness. Take the yarmulke off. Throw the dreidel away and beg for this audience's forgiveness for being such a fucking idiot and an immoral buffoon. Or you can double down and say that you were wrong about Donald Trump and he doesn't have Israel's back, and etc., so on and so forth. You are trapped. You are in, as Mike Felger on Boston Sports Radio would say, you are in the take bunker. You have barricaded yourself within the bunker. The only move ahead of you is to just keep firing. You have to keep shooting at everybody, keep calling everybody anti-Semitic, call your own audience anti-Semitic, and when you are wrong, you are fucked. And when Tim Pool has those moments there, he knows that it's coming. He knows the turn is coming. And I have the harebrained theory that we'll never know, that the Russians put some cheese out there for some of those boys with the RT deployment. Because I cracked up the fact that was Russian money and that all came out. They're like, yeah, didn't you guys know we were paying your most popular YouTubers?
Tim Pool, Benny Johnson. What was the other guy? There
was some guy that I didn't recognize.
Ruben Sandwich, David Rubin. But yeah, these guys, you're right. They know the prostate exam is coming for the Con Inc.
Bend over.
They are all going to fail or pass. I don't know how that.
Hope your dreidel's small.
I don't know what the results are, like what the good one is, pass, fail, but they're going to do the bad one. So it's going to be great. Yeah, they have a drinking game over you tonight, and you are destroying our audience right now.
Yeah, not bad.
No, it's good.
Hey, there's a lot of Sovereign Alliance-y stuff going on.
Yeah, your jimmies are fully rustled. I get it.
I'll have Ghost. Ghost will defeat me. I think I'm going to be his first reappearance next week. He's going to come on The Narrative again on Sunday night to talk about it. We got to just let him go on this Middle East stuff.
Man, I feel like he's been let go. He's been fully unleashed.
He'll bring a bottle of rosé, the brosé, and we'll just let him go off.
Dude, I remember it wasn't even Christmas, but it was maybe around like the holidays, and he was streaming all day long, and he went through like a whole bottle of eggnog or something. And he was so drunk by the end of the final stream. And he was so funny. That guy. I don't know how he's survived.
I love
long.
him though.
Oh, for sure, love him. Okay, I wanna get to kind of the last topic for tonight. We could just almost end it here, but this is kind of interesting because this is like Trump picking up right where they left off from the first term. So after Waltz got ousted, we had Rubio take over the NSA, and there's been a lot of talk about who's going to take over the role of the National Security Advisor. Is it going to be Flynn? Would be a great pick. Is it going to be O'Brien picking up from where he left off in his first term? Great pick. Could it be Ezra Cohen-Watnick? Is there somebody else that we don't even think of? I don't know. But one of the things they're doing here is they're going to restructure the NSC. And I want to read this quote here. Well, I'm just going to read 2 paragraphs, and then I'm going to show you something from one of my previous articles that I wrote. The changes aim to streamline the NSC in a way that reflects President Trump's top-down decision-making style. Instead of a large staff generating policy options, the revamped structure would have the president direct the National Security Advisor, who would then lead a leaner team to carry out those decisions. 2 sources said. The size of the NSC has varied over time. Under Trump's first term, the staff was reduced from 300 to about 150. The upcoming cuts would bring that number down to 50 or 60. Now, the reason I think this is interesting and why I said I think it's picking up where I left off, if you go back to my Devolution Part 13, and you could also even read a little bit of Part 23. Part 23, I talk about the hit list squad. And in the hit list squad, like Rich Higgins, Ezra Cohen-Watnick, Derek Harvey, Steve Bannon, all these key players, they were working at Trump's request to weed out the deep state. When Flynn got removed, McMaster's took over, then Bolton. They didn't really get their job done until O'Brien came in. And when O'Brien was in there as the NSA, he picked up where they left off in trimming down the NSC. And there's an article here from January 2020. So this is right as the China trade deal was taking place, right as COVID was about to kick off, impeachment was kicking off. I think January is when they walked the impeachment papers from the House to the Senate. All this stuff is going on. Trump is focusing on trimming down the NSC. I'll read a couple things here. Robert O'Brien said he expects to have trimmed down about 1/3 of the ranks of the NSC by the end of the month. I think the reality is by the time we finish up by the end of the month, whatever, we'll have about 60 to 70 staffers who've gone back to their home agency. There were about 180 policy staff detailed to the team when he took charge. So he's trying to weed it down to like 100 at this point. So far, about 40 to 45 have gone, streamlining the team. Trump is wary of leaks. Some of those damning testimony against Trump in the impeachment hearings came from people at the NSC. President Trump's sort of at war with the so-called deep state. What he calls a deep state is really what everybody else calls America experts on Iran, Iraq, and every other foreign policy. Remember, this is from 2020. He says a big NSC can be tempted to go operational and get more involved in diplomatic and military operations, better suited for the cabinet. So we're seeing this play out now. Trump's second term, like this is a continuation from where Trump left off at the end of his first term, after the Devo term of President Biden. Which, speaking of prostates, they found a nodule in Biden's butthole.
I did see that, yeah. Our boy Blue.
Unfortunate.
Not like that. Don't make him go like that. Come on.
I mean, honestly, if there was a way for him to go, it was probably like that. Yeah. Because the 4 years of him in office kind of felt like a 4-year prostate exam.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways.
That's true. It would be fitting. Yeah, I mean, I think also just everything we just talked about with the media, Israel in particular, it's not the only trap on the game board. I think Ukraine has been a trap. And when I'm talking about that, I don't mean actual, in this case, I mean narrative, media. There's been a lot of traps laid that, the Trump quicksand, CanCon and I talked about that on Sunday night and how he kind of baits those traps out. He lets people fully commit to their positions. I think what you're highlighting there when it comes to National Security Council, et cetera, these narrative traps, I think a lot of times they're for the media, et cetera, or those are the second order effects of these narrative traps. But what you're reading there and what you're surfacing might be a lot of the first order effects of the narrative traps. Is, if you think of Pete Hegseth, what's his name?
Waltz.
Tim Waltz, and the Signalgate stuff, Mike Waltz. And the Signalgate drama, that's kind of a narrative trap, right? Like, it's the way it looks at this point. Trump adopts a public posture of supporting anything that the Israeli government is doing, and it gets the war hawks that he names into his administration or National Security Council feeling really confident and like they got him. So they start trying to forward the war hawk agenda, and then boom, they get flushed, right? So it's like we're talking about the media layer of the battle space, but I think what you're probably seeing more of, or not seeing, but what's probably going on is a lot of this administrative battle space still taking place, where Trump is kind of accelerating this inversion of the Axis and allies, and along the way, he's probably weeding out the last stragglers of the Warhawk neocon contingent that are in that administration and in that military-industrial complex sphere, and saying, like, this isn't the way it's going to be, boys. We're not going to war over there. Like, we're actually genuinely going to do the right thing. But he's letting them expose themselves beforehand.
Yeah, it's also interesting the way he's restructuring it. He's turning it much more into like the way our military operates. Like, you have one guy at the charge. Like, well, first of all, it's President Trump at the top, and then you're going to have the National Security Advisor and like Secretary of Defense, and then they give the orders and they carry it out. But what I think is interesting is having Rubio do it, who's in this kind of role, like dual hat role at Department of State and now the NSC, having him do it before you get somebody else in there that you want. Like, the reason Flynn got kicked out was because the NSC itself basically turned on him. People at the NSC planted stories. They admitted to this. I talk about it in my part 23 as well. They planted fake stories and used that to like go after him and get him out of there. Like, the whole thing was a setup. When you have people like that there, they could fight against anybody Trump put in there. The fact that they didn't do it to Waltz, they tried to use Waltz to get Hegseth out instead. That was interesting. They're clearing it out before whoever he wants in there gets in there, which I think is important. Yeah. But then another interesting spot here with the Devo tie, and I forgot about this, so I don't remember who in the chat brought this up, but this is a really good story. The Doge narrative in the first like 3 months of Trump's term, maybe even like the 2 months, it was like hot and heavy. It was all anybody ever talked about, right? Department of Government Efficiency, Elon Musk, media was freaking out all the time, all these lawsuits, everything. That was like the focus of Trump's first 2 months in office. I hardly ever hear about Doge anymore. And Elon Musk is like kind of faded into the background. He's not as prominent in the storyline. And now there's rumors he's leaving. And the person that's taking over for him is a badass and somebody that directly ties to the Devolution series, somebody we've talked about in my part 23. It's going to be Russell Vought, the director of the White House Office of Management and Budget. The guy who was there, let me show you, he was part of the NSC in the same position. Members of the executive committee, the one that established and executed a continuity of government plan. Director of Office of Management and Budget, Russell Vought. This guy's taking over Doge for Elon Musk, which that's a Devo connection. I don't even know fully why or how. I'm just saying this is notable. I'm gonna have to dig into it more. But it is weird how like the story and the narrative changed from everything Elon Musk and Doge and how awful it was all the time to it's hardly talked about anymore by anybody.
Yeah. Well, it's going to be interesting. We'll have to see how it plays out on an actual level, obviously. But many of us at the time said, mostly positively, I certainly said it positively, that the Elon Musk Doge deployment was mostly narrative, was mostly an exposure operation of government waste, fraud, and abuse. That, if you look at it from that perspective, it was overwhelmingly successful. We had the dismantling of USAID, so that was an actual. But on an actual level, the actual trimming, etc., as we've pointed out many times, as you've talked about a lot on your show, has been severely lacking of what we thought Elon and company were going to do and what they said they were going to do, right? But if we were right about the narrative aspects of this, then the fact that you've got Vought here, that guy has actual written all over him if you're relating him to the devolution stuff, right? The whole kind of premise of the devolution operation from Donald Trump on down the chain, Christopher C. Miller, etc., is actual, right? Whatever you're seeing going on in the narrative is not exactly indicative of what is actually going on behind the levers of power, right? So I think that that's actually encouraging to potentially see a convergence point between people like me who are talking about Doge as a positive narrative deployment and people like you who are pointing out that the Doge deployment was lacking in actuals. Might we start seeing the actuals on the back of this deployment, whereas Elon and and Big Balls and all the ridiculous kind of clown world stuff that was going on in the first 3 months, that was the seek mission and the sort of cultivate the public mandate, let everybody know what's going on here, and Elon going on every podcast every news like outlet he could possibly go on to talk about what was going on. And now you've got these silent running, longtime Trump people that are going to go in and detonate the bombs, metaphorically speaking. Maybe. I mean, that's what I'm hoping for. But you'd think that you wouldn't put like a Devo guy in there if there wasn't actual work to be done that was going to be done.
Yeah, and part of me believes already that Vought has been doing this stuff the whole time, and Elon Musk is just like the face of it.
Cover, yeah.
And it makes you wonder, like, why did they want so much focus on Doge? Like, was that just to get like us super excited about government efficiency, or was it to draw media attention from something else? And if it was the first one, I think it worked, but then it got to a point where like all the government efficiency they're exposing has had no tangible effect on any single person's life. Like nobody knows, except for the people that maybe got fired, that were told got fired. But you go look at the Doge website and it's like, oh, we've saved $170 billion so far. That's $1,000 per taxpayer. That's like 2% of our budget, first of all. And we are not going to feel the actual effects of that. Like we're not going to get a check. We're not going to get that money back. In fact, like Congress right now, they're doing nothing. They're raising our debt limit. We paid $100 billion or something in interest this last month. It's insane. It's 25% of our total payment every month is to interest. Like we are not seeing actual effects from the government efficiency. So when does that part start? Because it's got to. Like they wouldn't go so hard and lean so hard into that narrative if they weren't going to show us the actuals at some point. But I don't think the actuals come from that department. It's got to come from Congress. It's not going to come from Congress though, because Congress is the beneficiaries of fraudulent elections, and because of that, they're not going to want to fix those elections. So where does it come from? I don't know.
Well, do you think though, as the Devo guy, there are still, if we're right about elections, if Donald Trump is right about elections, and contrary to people's feelings, if that extends to the 2024 election that made everybody feel very good, is it possible that Congress being, not doing anything doesn't really matter when you're dealing with Devo guys who are operating under a framework that was established 4 years ago, 5 years ago, that they are still operating under? Chris kind of talks about this from the perspective of the cabinet and calling them the TV characters. Now, I go back and forth on whether or not I think the TV characters are being used for good purposes. Overall, I think they are. I don't think it's a bad thing when you've got RFK Jr. going on TV and talking about like autism and vaccines. I think that's all good stuff. But from an actual level, do I think RFK Jr. is the one reforming American health? No. So who is doing it on an actual level, to your point? And if nobody is, then it would lead you to believe that Congress wields actual direct power over us right now. But I don't know if that's entirely consistent with the idea of why would they have implemented a Devo operation at the time they did, just to hand the country back to a fraudulent regime when they supposedly win the next one, right? So, I mean, these are rhetorical, but...
Yeah. I mean, when you look at what's going on with the devolution operation, a lot of it is like, it's like you're studying a black hole. Like you study, you can't actually directly see what's there, but you know it's there based on the stuff around it or whatever. I think that's how you study black holes, whatever, if you believe space is real. But that's like the analogy used. Like we can't see directly into there, so we don't know exactly what they did. We don't know how it plays out. There's no piece of paper that's got like the full plan listed on there that we can step by step go through and be like, yeah, this is definitely how it's going to play out at this time. I think there's a certain aspect
people
of
claim
this.
the Q drops do that, but they only say that in hindsight.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and that's
I'm
fine.
saying it lays out a plan, but I mean, like, you can't, to your point, you can't predict exactly what's going to happen when.
That might be the case. And like, I've fallen victim to that. Like, based on what I've seen surrounding the black hole, I've speculated when I think something might happen in the black hole, right? I thought it would only make sense for Trump to return before the midterms last time, because why would Trump allow another fraudulent election to go through? And we've had not only the midterms, but 2024, and it looks like we're heading into 2026, and the elections aren't going to be fixed again. Like, and I don't know if he's going to do the same thing for 2028. I have no idea. And I don't think you can predict stuff from the Q drops either. I mean, you can speculate, and again, I probably shouldn't have even
Generally.
said that.
Yeah.
I probably shouldn't have even said that because I've never read all the drops, and there are people who have, and some of them are pretty spot on with some of the stuff they show. But regardless, that has nothing to do with my point.
Yeah.
When we're looking at like what is Congress doing, and you look at the 2 bills that they have passed that have become law, okay, one of them is, I'll show you the 2. We've had a total of 5,092 bills introduced, okay, like actual bills, not resolutions or anything else, just bills from both chambers. 2 of them have become law. One of them was codifying a lot of Trump's like illegal immigration stuff, which that is interesting. The other one is just continuing the spending so that Congress had more time to negotiate the big, beautiful package. That's it. There's nothing else that's been put into law. And so what is the point of Congress in a devolution term? Like, okay, so they codified the Lake and Riley Act, whatever. I mean, not whatever, but did Trump need them to even do that to implement his immigration stuff? I don't think so. I think a lot of that was social media grifting by them. And then the other one is just for them to like pay themselves so they can do nothing longer. Like they've done nothing.
Yeah.
They're irrelevant.
Well, actually, that last word is kind of where I was going to go with that. Tying this back into the VOT conversation and Doge, what we might be dealing with here, even if we get away a little bit from the Devo, like you said, it's a black hole. We don't know what is actually going on or not. What might be going on a macro here is Trump's public argument and the public argument of his administration early into this term is that he is implementing the will of the American people because he has their mandate, right? Now, whether that mandate came through the results of a fake election or, as we believe, it came through knowing that he has the majority of the country and would win a real election, he's got the public mandate. If he does, whether or not there's a devolution operation that's influencing what Congress is or is not doing, the administration may simply just be doing what it wants to do in accordance with their interpretation of constitutional law and the powers of the presidency, and relying on exactly your last point you made, that if we can't reform Congress through the means that Congress is typically reformed, we are simply going to render them irrelevant and moot by carrying out the powers of the presidency as described in the Constitution, knowing that all the system can do is launch lawsuits against us that we are going to ignore, and judges' rulings against us that we are also going to ignore, right? Like, how often are we seeing a Stephen Miller or, name your cabinet official, name your administration official, DOJ official, respond to federal judges suing the Trump administration and hitting them with injunctions and all this crap by basically just saying, you can't do this to the president. He is carrying out his constitutional authority. So I think we might just be in this stage of a game of chicken where Trump is like, we're just going to cut all of these agencies and you can launch your lawsuits and you can do whatever you want, but they're not allowed back in the building. So now we get into a power versus power type of situation. And I think that's why you see some of these deep state mouthpieces like your Maxine Waters, your Chuck Schumers, essentially calling for revolt within the system because they know that Trump just isn't listening to Congress. He isn't listening to corrupt judges, and he certainly isn't listening to the administrative state. He's just doing what he feels is in his constitutional authority to do.
Yeah, and where I struggle with some of this and like trying to game theory out, fully knowing I have no idea how this plays out. Fully knowing I have no actual idea of what is going on, just like nobody does. We all are guessing. Some people will admit that, some people won't. But I'm willing to admit that I have no idea. Guessing, speculating, analyzing, trying to, there's this worldview and things playing out. And I feel like what we talk about is more over the target than not. And based on that, like what I believe we're almost kind of witnessing here is like the Sovereign Alliance and Trump and everything in the Devil Op. In a lot of ways, it's like a hostile takeover of the United States from the regime as it was, and they had totally captured everything. They're just not going to let it play out as if it is. Like, we're not going to recognize that it was a hostile takeover until something like more direct happens, where like if the enemy could, you know, if these judges were able to actually stop Trump, like if they were to come out and give a ruling that was just totally in the face, which they've done many times, but nothing like on a huge narrative big scale, like where no, Trump, you can't do this one thing, and Trump is just like, well, I'm going to do it anyway. Yeah. They have no enforcement mechanism. The enforcement mechanism of the past was the manufacturing consensus through like the George Floyd riots and the media and all these things. Those powers are being stripped away. I don't think they fully stripped away the media aspect yet. And I think part of that is deliberate because Trump is clearly keeping them relevant by giving them all these interviews. But at least the manufactured, riots and the actual anarchy arm or whatever of like, if there were to be like some sort of civil war or fight back, that seems to have been removed in a lot of ways. So at some point, something is going to happen, and it's going to be like an in-your-face, like Trump directly going against what the mainstream media wants to pretend our Constitution represents. You know what I mean? Like, oh my gosh, Trump is finally the dictator we've been telling you that he has been. And they've been close in a couple of stories, but I don't think we've gotten all the way there yet. And it's going to be at that point when nothing happens to stop it, and like the end result is nothing bad happens, and like that's actually a good thing for America. And again, I don't know what it is, but I think that's when it's going to click for people that our government was captured, our Congress is irrelevant, the judiciary branch is totally going outside of their depths on everything. Like the entire thing is broken. Like at some point, the hostile takeover is, if you want to call it that, it's going to be exposed, and people are going to be okay with it because of the result. Does that make sense?
I totally agree with that. I think that's a really interesting way to think about it. And when you talked about the Devo, you can apply sort of conceptually the Devo framing where you mentioned that it's like a black hole. It's the gravitational force around it that allows you to define it. I can totally agree with you that we don't know what that would be, what event it would be, what controversy it would be, but you can feel it coming. And man, that's interesting to think about and to try to kind of track the gravity around as we go forward, because it also, if you're right, and I think you are, you can reverse engineer that and look at a lot of the strategy and the timeline that patriots have laid out when it comes to especially narrative engineering. You mentioned on the actuals, like I agree with you in terms of disarming Antifa, disarming American terror cells, which are what these riots all come out of, right? Very literally, the one actual that we know has come out of Doge, or at least the Doge effort early on, has been massive funding cuts to NGOs, specifically the NGOs that are responsible for funding the media ops that help to foment color revolutions, and the kinetic boots on the ground soldiers of color revolutions, like as you said with George Floyd. Black Lives Matter, those are foot soldiers. They were paid to do all of that stuff, very literally. It's just that the funding all came through legal, extra-governmental agencies, nonprofits, NGOs, right? So on an actual level, there's been a battle space prepping in the form of almost a disarmament. And on a narrative level, though, I think this is why, going back to what I was saying about the germination and the harvest, etc., what you're talking about might be why it was done so carefully by the Trump administration, because they know that they're going to get the regime, the resistance, into a place where they have to go in one direction or the other, right? They either have to go into full-scale retreat, or they're going to have to go into full-scale attack. And to your point, their only attack vector, their only power projection, is to get the American people to fight their battles for them. And in order to do that, you need to control the narrative battle space, and you need to control some of the actual battle space. It feels like they are in the weakest position on both layers than they've ever been in over the last 10 years, So whatever massive controversy there is, they're not going to be able to whip up that kind of insurrection. And this also might lend credence to the idea that J6 2021, like, that was it. That was their big all assets deployed. We are going to weaponize everything we have left in the media, and we're going to weaponize everything we have left on the ground to try to get this whole movement out of here. And all that happened is Trump basically went into hibernation for 4 years and came back stronger than ever.
Yeah, I think I formulated what you said here is kind of helping me distill what I'm thinking of here. So Ash in the chat made a comment, and I want to read that, and then I want to read something. Ash says, I'm loyal to the Constitution and support Trump as long as he is loyal to the Constitution. I think he is saving the world, FTR, but the Constitution is the standard, not any man. I agree with you, but I want you to think about this, okay? And keep in mind, Trump has told us he is giving the government back to we the people, right? Like, what does that look like? And put yourself in the
power, not even the government.
Giving the power back to we the people. Think of what that means in terms of like what the founders were thinking. I'm going to read these 2 lines from the Declaration of Independence. That whenever any form of government becomes destructive to these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute a new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. And then goes on, but when a long train of abuses and usurpations pursuing invariably the same object evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for the future security. Like, that is, when I say hostile takeover, what I see is Trump doing that, what the founders did and told us they were doing in the Declaration of Independence. He's doing that, but he's doing it within the narrative battle space of our existing Constitution without having to actually like overthrow the government. He's doing it from within, from the position of power, and he's like that's how it's being done. It's not like a formal hostile takeover. It's not a formal insurrection or declaration of war or anything, but he's dismantling it with those principles in mind. And when you have those principles in mind, like, who cares if the judicial branch says, no, you can't deport a gang member because he is a father from Maryland? Like, you know what I mean? Like, he doesn't care. He's doing what the founders said we should do when our government becomes what it has become. He is doing that.
I totally agree with that. I think when you use the term principles, that's what it's all about. This is at the heart of many of the arguments that we have at Badlands that I think are good arguments to have about the Constitution. I like the way Ash frames a lot of that stuff. I also like the way G-Money references a lot of that stuff. He'd probably be like the Sam Adams in the room. I think you need that mix of voices. But to your point there, the way I think of the Constitution or any of these systems, the Constitution is literally a system. It was a consensus protocol layered, a standard operating procedure, essentially, layered over the founding principles of the American Republic. It was a system intended to codify and protect those principles. It did not work. We can have endless arguments as to whether or not a return to the Constitution is a good thing or not. Yes, in principle, I believe it's a good thing. It'd be great if we were living in accordance with the Constitution. Why we are not is a matter up for a lot of debate, and I think it's good debate to have. But it is an objective fact that the intent as codified by the founding fathers did not work as they intended it to work. And Benjamin Franklin told you this was going to happen. I'm not going to get into an argument with Ash when she's in the chat. This is my interpretation of this, but Benjamin Franklin said, I've given you a republic. We've given you a republic if you can keep it. Obviously, we didn't keep it. To John's point, I think we are trying to take it back. Now, interestingly, you can still get to have your constitutional argument, because if Trump does take it back, to your point, if he takes it back by adhering to the founding principles in the Constitution and ignores the amendments and all the shit, starting with the 14th Amendment, that ruined the Constitution, I think you can make a strong argument that Trump is constitutionally overthrowing an unconstitutional government, right? So a lot of this comes down to a bit of a semantics argument that I think people get way too wrapped up into, in terms of the semantics of constitutional versus not constitutional. Because the bottom line is, as soon as you constitutionally pass an amendment that says the Second Amendment is abolished, then you no longer are living in accordance with the Constitution. That happened a long time ago. And then one more point on it, to your point about the battle space and everything. I think this lends credence to the idea that Trump and company and patriots, whether you're talking about like Q drops and going around them like nobody's going around them, devolution, etc., they have used a lot of the enemy's tactics against them. And I think it's really, really interesting, especially when you've got the terminology like infiltration over invasion. Everything you just laid out, you can kind of look at it this. We always think of the deep state when we say that, but that shit goes both ways, and I absolutely think Trump and company have been using it against them.
Oh, 100%. I mean, if you go back and read Rich Higgins' memo, it's all about the battle space that Trump has to operate in, and when you're operating in those battle spaces, you play by those rules. But Ash, in the chat, which some of the stuff she's saying, like, what is your definition of like it didn't work? Is it a utopia? It didn't deliver utopia, so it didn't work? No, honestly, I think the Constitution delivered exactly what it was intended to, and at some point, it kind of started to get perverted a little bit. And the founders knew that was coming, which is why they literally put in the Declaration of Independence everything they did about when people alter it and change it or whatever, corrupt it.
Yeah, throw it out.
It is your job to start over again and do it in a new way. Times change. Like, it's kind of impossible to expect a document from 1776 to like stay there forever and be perfect when times and technology and everything changes, right? That's not going to happen. But the principles it was founded in do remain. And that is what we've gotten so far away from. And we can kind of start over. We're never going to get something that gives us a utopia. There's no such thing. It's impossible to find until you die and go to heaven. We're not going to get that here. But we can do our best to operate in like in the best way possible on moral principles and create a country that benefits as many people as possible. We can do that again for sure if we get rid of the people that benefit from the corrupt system. And that is what Trump is doing.
I will say on a little utopia aside, though, there was a lot of interesting signal. Trump took up all the gravity of the room, speaking of gravity, but lots of interesting meetings and speeches, etc., going on over in the Middle East this week concerning the advent of AI, nuclear energy, as I mentioned earlier, automation, humanoid robotics. These are big topics, and these are concerning things when it comes to a lot of people, in the world, not just in this audience. But I am encouraged to see that many of the people talking about these things seem to be the people that are also in the midst of overthrowing the regime. And I don't believe in utopia in terms of you can't get rid of human nature. You can't get rid of bad actors. You can't get rid of evil, etc. But I do think that there's a lot of Luddites who are afraid of automation, etc. And I'm really interested to see how they change their tune once Donald Trump goes full bore into automation, nuclear energy, and decentralization, because he will.
We talked about this the other day. I do think technology is a way of enslavement. Like, I don't know.
It can be.
It's a GART topic, I think, that we should explore. Like, can you actually have sovereignty when you're slave to technology? I don't know. It's the Ted Kaczynski
I just see it
panel.
as a human. I just see it as a human extender.
Could be.
Same thing with electricity. It's all human extenders. That means it's a lever where you can extend human greed and corruption and control. To your point, absolutely. And I also think it's a way of doing the opposite. It depends on it. As Chris often says, it depends on who's flipping the switch. It depends on who's got control of these things, which is why it's important to track who does. I'm just saying, when Donald Trump gets up there like within the next year and starts talking about like full bore acceleration into artificial intelligence, humanoid robotics, and the complete transformation of the American manufacturing system, like it's people can still say that it's going to all enslave us, but then you're going to have to say that Trump is marching us head first into the Great Reset, and that's going to be a weird take.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. I get what you're throwing down. Let's get to the rants and boosts. I'm going to check if Rumble Studios got any ads. I checked earlier and they didn't, which is lame. But by the way, guys, if you wouldn't mind doing us a favor, we have I don't even know how many watching right now. Almost 12,000 watching. If you guys wouldn't mind hitting that thumbs up for us, it'd be greatly appreciated. And it's very easy to do. We don't ask much of you guys. Just
it's not that easy.
Share our stuff and hit the little button with the thumb that goes up. And if you didn't like what you heard tonight, you can hit the down one too. You can join the thousands of bots that do that every now and then.
Yeah, we got bots for that. I was gonna say.
Yeah. But yeah, we'd appreciate if you hit that thumbs up, and I'll see if we got any boosts, and we'll read the rants and then get you guys out of here.
Got a couple boosts. Lionheart sent over $100 over the course of 2 boosts, so thank you very much, Lionheart. Said, good evening, gents. My thoughts on Anna Paulina circle all the way back to how I was originally red-pilled by my cousins several years ago, though we are watching a movie angle. While I do not believe it's all literally a movie, it is not much of a stretch to believe she, like many other characters, AOC, Rand Paul, are part of the production and crew team. Think of Anna Paulina, Luna, and MTG, and even Bobert as the smoke machine operators. Someone's got to do it. God bless. Always possible. And, my stance on that stuff is that if those people are part of the movie, I don't think that they are witting or knowing that they are. But I can absolutely believe that, like, she's being just given breadcrumbs and just being like, look, she'll do something funny with this. I
could also see her just being a total grifter. Like,
Yep.
She's operating in a way where you wouldn't know.
Yeah,
you wouldn't know.
Seuss Cam 50. What?
Hold on. Honest question for the chat here. I don't expect you to answer, Bernie, right before the chat. Because when she came out with that D-Class task force, everybody shit their pants that somebody would question that she was doing like an honest good thing here, that she was going to help further the declassification of documents. Name one thing that Anna Paulina Luna has done to further anybody's knowledge about government secrets. One thing. It's her challenge. Let me know.
She said that the JFK assassination was something was up with it. Man.
Vagina.
I don't know why
your camera's gone.
There we go.
And she also said, if I'm not mistaken, she was like, something a little weird's going on with that Jeffrey Epstein fella. She said that too.
She wrote some letters to Pam Bondi, who kind of ignored her, I'm pretty sure. I don't know.
Somebody has an answer. I saw. I can't pull up the chat.
What was the answer?
Titties and ass.
That's not something she did or does. That's something she possesses.
She works at that every day.
I don't know.
So,
I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, if you need a quickie in a theater, they're great for that. But otherwise, I don't know if we're getting a lot of D-Class. Oh, I know. No. They're all the same.
She made swimsuits great again. They were always pretty great though. It all depends on who wears them. Like, it wasn't just her. But yeah, are there no more boosts? Is that why you're quiet?
That's all the boosts, yeah.
Okay.
Oh no, there was one tonight. Sue's Cam 15. Thank you, Badlands, for imprinting the Una Panuta Banca song into all your viewers' brains. It's on repeat all day, and it will not stop. Una Panuta Banca.
You're welcome. That was my way.
Shout out to Greg Gutfeld for ripping us. I did see Ash's conspiracy theory on that, and I found it compelling. I'm willing to convince myself of it.
I agree. It was very compelling. That'll be our outro video tonight, is Ash's conspiracy on what actually happened with the Gutfeld clip. And if you guys aren't aware of what I'm talking about, let me get that pulled up too. I think this is the one. And ironically, I'm not even going to say it. Hold for processing. Actually, I'll read a couple rants while I'm waiting for that. Flying Storm says, I'd like to see John and BB try the Alex Jones blue meth and do a show. No,
Blue
thanks.
meth.
I don't even know what blue meth is, but I think I'm going to say no.
Anna Paulina Luna. All right.
That's what we're talking about. And Ash has a spot on conspiracy about it. Actually, would you mind pulling that up?
Where is it?
Like
You have
on
a
our
video
Twitter?
version of it?
On a Twitter. Just like pull it up on Twitter and send the link in the private chat. So I can keep reading here. Noah1745, is there any chance the Badlands cruise will stop over in Bangkok? Well, if Alpha Warrior gets a say, it probably would, but since he doesn't have a say, I'll say no. Wedge Gravy, that speech in Saudi Arabia was like Trump declaring victory. It wasn't quite declaring victory, but it was him clearly defining the roadmap of not only where things are about to be going, but like what they've been working on and building since Trump's first term and what was being worked on and built while Biden was in office. It's the Sovereign Alliance, it's peace everywhere, economic deals for everybody. Yeah, spot on.
Yeah, I agree. I think I kind of put it as a victory today, but I don't think it's done in terms of it's been actualized, but I do think that we are in a different battle space now and that we're definitely seeing acceleration. I don't think we're just going to see pure repeats from last time.
Yeah, okay. I have that video pulled up for later, so I found it. 1027JS says, thanks, guys. Thank you, Joe. Good to see you. Phil Scarborough, guys, there's no sovereign alliance with Xi. The CCP are bad dudes responsible for murdering hundreds of millions of their own people. Ask the Mongolians, Tibetans, and Uyghurs, or Steve Bannon. Yeah, the China's one. That's where I always like push the most back on. Like I could totally see Putin. I did a whole article in my part 16 on me basically trying to argue that the CCP is asshole. Trump and his entire administration thinks so. But where I will say I've come a decent ways on is like the good twin, evil twin argument, having not fully studied the Chinese dynamics like most have. So,
well, here's a easy, at least, you don't have to come
I don't
down
care about
on
easy,
one.
just keep it brief. How's that?
Yeah, you don't have to come down on one side of the divide here, but is it fair to say that there has definitely been an internal war going on in China, if for no other reason than the fact that the current administration has arrested tens of thousands of CCP operatives, right? Like, you could look at that and just say like it's just bad people taking out other bad people. I don't know. I think the way Trump says like we're actually very good friends and we've known each other a long time. I think he's telling you a lot there. Check out Doomed Dynasty on Burning Bright. And that's my deep dive on Xi, which is even longer than the one on Putin.
I cannot recommend that because I have not read it. So, but it's probably all right.
The chat can read it.
Wedge Gravy says, why was there only one Smurf with the tattoo and it was a heart with an arrow through it? Is he the only one that doesn't bang Smurfette? What? I don't get that reference, Wedge Gravy, but I appreciate the rant. Clearcat367 says, Oregon Pacific Northwest Badlanders meetup is Saturday, May 17th, 12:30 to 4, Pioneer Villa Restaurant, 33180 Highway 228, 15 exit 216, Halsey, Oregon, 97348, RSVP at Clearcat367 on Telegram or X. That's awesome.
Nice.
Speaking of Badlanders meetups, I got two I can announce now. I only have one graphic, though. First of all, June 28th, we are going to be doing a meetup in Lakeland, Florida from 5 to 8 p.m. You're going to have to RSVP if you want the address to where it's going to be at. RSVP to Vida, VIDA-MCC at protonmail.com. It's going to be awesome. I'm going to be there. Zach's going to be there. CanCon, JB White, and I think Cam Cooksy's also going to come. It should be a big one. They've already gotten a lot of RSVPs, and there is limited space, so make sure you RSVP if you plan on coming. We also are for sure now, I spoke with Quinny today, we are going to be doing a Minnesota meetup on June 14th, probably sometime in the evening-ish time frame. We just have to settle on a time, and it kind of depends on some travel stuff. So that'll be announced probably tomorrow or the next day, but a soft book in your calendar of June 14th in the evening.
A half chub
in the calendar, June 14th at Quinny's Pub. and I'll get the information for that for RCP in here soon. So, and I'll be at that one. What do we got? Clearcat again says, "Oh my God, Bedlandia, you are all my family now. Spent past few hours with friends from the before time, still taking boosters, hating on DJT. I'm so deeply grateful for this amazing community and all of you." Thanks.
I have that moment every now and again when like an in-law offhand mentions that they got their newest vaccine of being like, people are still doing that, huh? You know, like you have those moments where you realize that we still have a ways to go with some of these people. Well,
it's crazy.
That some are just lost forever, right? Like getting updated vaccinations for a fake pandemic.
It's nuts, man. Do you remember when they got as far as like you had to test for COVID by sticking a freaking Q-tip up your ass for a COVID test?
Mm-hmm.
Like that was
some
how
of us
far
were
this
already
got.
doing that for fun.
Yeah, yeah. The prostrating yourself to.
Maybe if Biden had been doing that and testing himself that way, this wouldn't have happened.
You're right, man. Wedge Gravy says, "He who has the gold makes the rules. Have you seen the Oval Office lately?"
Gonna be interesting to see what happens. You got a lot of people in Trump's administration openly talking about selling the gold.
I'm trying to go to Washington D.C. in June as well, and I have those congressmen. I'm gonna see if they can give me like a tour, and I'm gonna see if I can get away into the Oval Office. I doubt it'll happen, but
they're gonna put you in the basement.
Yeah, they're probably gonna like, waterboard me or something.
Yeah,
let's see what happens. S2G109. Can anyone answer? Ho Israel is our greatest ally. I don't think anybody else.
They're one of the greatest fake nations that we've ever constructed after an engineered war.
The Jews.
We have the final demand. They gave their cell up to Mossad to have a secret meeting with Bibi. I wonder how long it takes to clone a cell phone. Everybody's cell got bugged or cloned. Please share the audio of Bibi's baby laughing. Oh. I can't do that. I won't do that.
Yeah, somebody will like reverse engineer it.
Yeah, I'm not gonna do it. And who cares about the baby laughing? When you hear how gay Bernie Brett sounds talking in his baby voice, you will think differently of him. And I don't know if our network is ready for that.
Yeah,
whatever. Red Pilled American 21. Holy shit! I believe you may have solved the meaning of whatever Q drop this is, and this is on tonight's show. Israel is the king of CIA, Mossad, terror, disinfo, etc. And so I'm going to need you to interpret everything they just said here.
I must draw.
There's this drop. Nice game of chess. I'm sure somebody's already like gone there.
Yeah, I mean, I think all this stuff's interesting. I don't pretend to have the answers as to how it maps out. I've said many, many times, I think the Q drops were a fantastic tool, and I think they can be used in a lot of different ways. The way I personally use them is to just macro.
We've spoken on this ad nauseum. We don't need to do it again. But thank you for the rant and saying that, and that is interesting. And we have another rant from Miss Rhea Freedom Fighter. Great show. Thank you. Thank you. And that's all of them.
Thanks, guys.
So yeah, we're gonna end with the Ash theory on why Gutfield sang that, but didn't directly sing it. Like, this is great. Right. This is from last night on OnlyLands. Make sure you guys hit that thumbs up. I will be back tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern with the Daily Herald. Burning Bright, you won't be back till Sunday.
Sunday night, Ghost will be joining me to freak out about the events of the last week on the narrative. So that should be a fun one. I think we're going to call it, last time we did Sovereign Alliance, I think we're going to do Sovereign Siege, because we've entered a new phase. So that's where I'll be.
Awesome. Well, thank you everybody for tuning in. Hit the thumbs up, and we'll see you tomorrow. Make sure if you're new to the channel, you give us a follow. Follow us on all our socials, and have a great rest of your evening. Oh, and after this video ends, I'm going to send you guys all over to Brad on Where We Go One, We Go All After Dark. It's like our nightcap show. So catch y'all later.
Plausible that he would come up with a joke that inside and have it have nothing to do with having seen it on Badlands.
Here's what I think happened. I think that
that they saw the clip, they thought it was hilarious, the entire bit, right? The whole Una Panuna thing, wanted to do it, decided in the Fox News general counsel that they had to talk to that it was too racist. Gutfeld dug his heels in and was pissed about it, and then sang her name to the tune as an FU to the OGC guys.
That's quite the backstory.
That's exactly
That's how I see it. That's how I see it.
That's exactly what happened.
That's exactly
Chris, welcome
what
to the show, man.
Thanks. Man, Ash, that was quite a conspiracy theory.
Plausible